The human caretaker stepped into the dimly lit containment area of the space station, taking a deep breath as the hum of machinery filled the room. Outside the reinforced glass walls, stars glittered against the blackness of space. But inside, the atmosphere was tense and heavy with anticipation. Tonight they were alone, responsible for predator cubs whose reputation had spread across the station like wildfire. These were not ordinary animals. They were intelligent, quick, and unpredictable. Creatures capable of sensing fear and exploiting hesitation. The cubs moved silently in the shadows, their eyes glinting in the low light, observing every motion with sharp focus. The caretaker's boots made soft, deliberate steps across the metallic floor, careful not to startle them, yet moving with enough confidence to show that they were not afraid. Each cub circled its enclosure slowly, claws scraping faintly against the metal, tails flicking with agitation, testing limits that had been set but never truly challenged before. The human knew that any sudden movement or loud noise could provoke a dangerous reaction, so they remained calm, letting their presence speak louder than words. They adjusted the lighting slightly, making the room glow gently, enough for visibility but soft enough to avoid provoking the cubs. The hum of the station and the occasional soft growl from the cubs became a rhythm, a tense melody of alertness and patience. As minutes turned into hours, the caretaker's eyes never left the cubs, reading their body language, noting which were restless, which were curious, and which simply observed. Tonight was not just a duty, it was a test of patience, awareness, and courage. Alone among predator cubs, the human understood that every gesture, every breath, and every movement mattered, and that the safety of the night depended entirely on their calm and careful control. The cubs began to stir as the night deepened, their small bodies moving with a restless energy that filled the room with tension. They paced along the edges of their enclosure, claws clicking softly against the reinforced floor, tails flicking in irritation and curiosity. Low, rumbling growls escaped from their throats, not loud enough to be threatening, yet strong enough to unsettle even the most experienced observer. The human caretaker watched closely, eyes scanning every shadow, every twitch of fur and muscle, understanding that these subtle signs often foretold sudden changes in behavior. Some cubs stopped mid-step, sniffing the air, ears swiveling as if they sensed something invisible, a shift in energy or the presence of a disturbance that humans could not perceive. The caretaker adjusted their posture, remaining calm and steady, knowing that any sign of fear or hasty movement could escalate the tension. One cub, slightly larger than the rest, began circling faster, emitting a low growl that resonated against the walls of the enclosure. Another cub mirrored the movement, and soon the group formed a cautious, restless pattern, testing the limits of their space and the patience of the human who stood vigil. Shadows flickered across the walls as the lighting system hummed softly, and every sound, the shuffle of claws, the faint scrape of tails, the low growls, seemed amplified in the stillness of the station. Despite the unease, the human remained composed, hands relaxed at their sides, breathing measured and steady, sending a silent signal that they were not a threat. Each movement was deliberate, calculated to convey confidence and control. Something was about to happen. The caretaker could feel it, an energy building in the cubs that demanded respect, observation, and readiness. Alone in the room with predator cubs, every second became a lesson in patience, perception, and quiet authority, setting the stage for the night to unfold in ways no one could yet predict. The human glanced around the containment area, noticing how the other guards kept their distance, lingering near the exit or chatting in low voices far from the cubs' enclosures. Each step closer to the predator cubs seemed to terrify them, and their hesitation was clear in the way they avoided eye contact or quickened their pace when passing by. Whispers traveled through the hallways of the station, tales of the cubs' intelligence, speed, and unpredictable aggression, making even the strongest seem wary. The human understood immediately that tonight the responsibility was entirely theirs. No one else would step forward if the situation escalated, and the safety of the cubs, and of themselves, rested on their own vigilance. Taking a deep breath, they adjusted the control panel at the side of the enclosure, checking the security systems and monitoring sensors. The cub's low growls and restless movements served as a constant reminder that this was no ordinary night. Every paw step, every flick of a tail, every glimmer of eyes in the dim light demanded attention and respect. The human's heart beat steadily, not from fear but from focused awareness, knowing that their calm presence could influence the behavior of these highly intelligent predators. They observed patterns, noticed which cubs were more agitated, and anticipated where energy might escalate next. Despite the tension, a quiet determination filled them. They were alone in this responsibility, yes, but that also meant they had control in the room, the power to prevent chaos, and the chance to maintain peace. The other guards' fear only strengthened the human's resolve. Tonight would test patience, observation, and courage in ways that no training could fully prepare for. But the human welcomed the challenge, ready to face whatever unfolded in the darkness with careful attention and quiet authority. The room was almost completely dark, save for the faint glow of the cub's eyes reflecting off the walls and the faint shimmer of the station lights. Each pair of eyes followed the human's every move, small points of light that seemed alive with curiosity and latent danger. The caretaker moved slowly, deliberately, each step measured so that the cubs could not mistake hesitation for fear, nor sudden movement for a threat. The metallic floor beneath their feet made soft sounds, each one amplified in the tense silence of the containment area. The cubs' bodies were barely visible, shadows shifting and stretching with each twitch of muscle or flick of tail. But the glowing eyes told the human everything they needed to know. Which cubs were agitated, which were curious, and which were preparing to test boundaries. No words were spoken, yet a quiet understanding passed between them, a silent negotiation of respect and attention. The human's arms stayed relaxed at their sides, movements slow, fluid, and confident, signaling control without aggression. Even a small twitch of a finger could draw focus, and each subtle motion was intentional. The tension in the room was thick, pressing against the human's senses, yet they remained calm, eyes scanning constantly, taking in every sound, shadow, and heartbeat. The cub's growls were soft but warning enough, resonating in the stillness like distant thunder. Step by step, the caretaker moved through the center of the enclosure, careful to maintain a presence that was strong yet non-threatening. It was a delicate balance, one that required patience, precision, and quiet authority. Alone with the predator cubs, the human understood that tonight, every glance, every gesture, every breath mattered, and that the room held a silent, almost sacred tension between instinct, intelligence, and trust. Among the restless cubs, one began to move differently, edging closer to the human than the others. Its paws made soft, cautious sounds against the metal floor, and its glowing eyes never left the caretaker's face. The human did not flinch or step back. Instead, they stood completely still, arms relaxed, exuding a calmness that was both steady and deliberate. There was no aggression, no sudden movements, only quiet presence. Each second felt stretched, the room charged with silent energy, as the cub tested boundaries, sniffing the air and shifting its weight. The caretaker's breathing remained even, a steady rhythm that communicated patience, restraint, and confidence without a single word. Slowly, the cub inched closer, muscles taut yet hesitant, as if deciding whether the human was friend or threat. The other cubs watched, their low growls subdued, curiosity replacing agitation. Every flick of tail, every shift of paw became a conversation without sound. The human knew that one wrong motion could trigger panic or aggression, so they allowed the cub to take the lead, letting its instincts guide the approach. It was a subtle test of trust, a silent negotiation between species, where strength was measured not in claws or teeth, but in composure, respect, and quiet authority. By the time the cub reached the human's side, the room seemed to hold its breath, awaiting the next move in this delicate dance of patience and understanding. The room grew tense as the cubs moved with a calculated rhythm, forming a loose circle around the human's bed. Their glowing eyes shone in the dim light, reflecting intelligence, curiosity, and a hint of menace. Low growls vibrated through the floor, claws scraping against the metal with a sound that seemed to echo in the stillness of the night. Each cub shifted slightly, adjusting its position as if testing the human's reactions, gauging whether hesitation would signal weakness. The caretaker's heart beat steadily, but there was no fear in their posture, no sudden movements to trigger panic. Every muscle was relaxed, every step measured in thought. They understood instinctively that fear could provoke attack, and patience might earn the cub's trust instead. Slowly, the human's gaze swept across the circle, observing subtle cues. The way tails twitched, ears tilted, and claws dug into the floor. A single misstep could escalate tension, so the caretaker remained motionless, projecting calm and quiet authority. The cubs inched closer, their proximity increasing the pressure in the air, yet the human did not flinch. With steady breathing and unwavering composure, they communicated a silent message. Respect, presence, and patience mattered more than dominance or force. The circle tightened, the room pulsed with tension, but within the silent exchange, a careful understanding began to form. A fragile connection between predator and guardian that could determine the outcome of the night. In the tense stillness of the room, the human made a subtle, intentional movement. It was barely noticeable. A shift of weight, a gentle lift of a hand, but it carried a quiet command, a signal of calm control. The cubs, sharp and intelligent, froze mid-step, their growls softening into uncertain murmurs. None of the other guards had ever dared to approach this closely, let alone project authority without weapons or loud commands, and now the human was doing exactly that. Each cub's glowing eyes flicked from one to another, assessing the situation, unsure how to respond to such composed presence. The movement was deliberate but non-threatening, a demonstration of dominance grounded in patience, confidence, and awareness rather than force. The human remained steady, posture relaxed, yet every small gesture radiated assurance that was difficult to challenge. Slowly, a shift occurred. The cub's movements became hesitant, tails twitching in consideration rather than aggression, ears adjusting as if listening to a silent command. The room's tension did not vanish, but the balance of power began to change. The human's subtle authority communicated something the cubs could not ignore. Control need not come from fear, strength, or loud dominance. Here, composure and quiet presence created a space where even the fiercest predators paused, recognizing that this caretaker held command not through intimidation, but through patient and deliberate understanding of their instincts. Suddenly, one of the cubs lunged forward, claws extended and teeth bared, testing the limits of the human's presence. The movement was swift, precise, and full of raw energy, a direct challenge to the caretaker standing in the center of the enclosure. Yet the human did not panic. Every motion was calculated, fluid, and deliberate, responding to the cub's aggression with redirection rather than confrontation. With a quick step to the side and a gentle guiding motion of the arm, the lunging cub was steered away from the human's body, redirected toward the center of the room without feeling threatened or cornered. The other cubs froze, their glowing eyes wide, carefully observing this display. They had never seen a human move with such confidence and control, responding to strength with calm intelligence instead of fear or force. Each subtle adjustment communicated understanding. The human respected their instincts but also established boundaries. The room was thick with tension as the cub assessed the response, growling softly but not escalating further. Slowly it backed off, circling cautiously while the human remained steady, posture relaxed, eyes calm. A silent lesson was unfolding before all the cubs. Strength was not always about power or aggression. Control could come from patience, understanding, and skillful action. The other cubs watched closely, learning that the human's presence demanded respect, not by intimidation, but by precise, thoughtful guidance that proved both authority and care could coexist. After the sudden lunge and careful redirection, a subtle change began to ripple through the group of cubs. Their growls softened, tails no longer thrashed with immediate aggression, and their sharp eyes, once filled with challenge, now flicked toward the human with cautious curiosity. Each movement from the caretaker radiated calm confidence, a silent message that strength did not always need to be loud or violent. The cubs began to pause mid-step, circling with measured steps rather than charging recklessly. The human's presence seemed to shift the energy in the room, transforming tension into a careful observation. Slowly, The cubs leaned slightly closer, sniffing the air, tilting their heads, testing whether the calm authority was steady or fleeting. The human did not force interaction, did not reach out or make abrupt motions, but instead stood firm, showing that patience and composure carried power of their own. In this quiet exchange, boundaries became clear without aggression, and respect was earned rather than demanded. One by one, the cubs acknowledged the human's skill and awareness, and even the most restless among them adjusted its posture, ears lowered slightly, muscles relaxing just enough. Curiosity replaced pure fear, and cautious respect settled into the group. For the first time that night, the human was no longer just a presence. They were a figure of authority, a silent leader who could command attention without a single roar or snap, earning recognition through understanding and control. As the night progressed, a quiet transformation began to take place. The cubs, once restless and aggressive, now moved with a slower, more deliberate rhythm, their sharp eyes observing the human rather than challenging them. Every small movement from the caretaker was calm, steady, and unhurried, radiating a sense of confidence that did not demand fear but inspired attention. Slowly, the cubs stopped circling aggressively, their postures relaxing as they began to sense a subtle connection forming. The human did not speak loudly or issue commands. Instead, they stood firm, breathing steadily, allowing the cubs to adjust to their presence at their own pace. Each step, tilt of the head, and measured glance created a silent communication, a bridge between species that needed no words. Tentative trust began to replace the tension that had filled the room just hours before. One cub stepped closer, sniffing gently at the human's hand, while another curled slightly toward the edge of the bed, no longer daring to attack. The human remained patient, understanding that true connection required observation, restraint, and respect. By the end of the night, the once fearsome cubs had formed a tentative understanding, a silent bond that showed even the wildest instincts could be tempered by presence, patience, and calm authority. In that moment, the human had not only survived the night, they had begun to forge trust where none had existed before. The night continued with careful observation. The human remained still, watching every twitch of the cubs' tails, every flick of their ears, and every glance that darted toward them. Each movement was studied, not with fear, but with focus and awareness. The cubs, in turn, seemed to sense the attention, their intelligence shining through as they adjusted their positions, tested boundaries, and explored the human's reactions. One cub leaned forward slightly, then paused, gauging whether the human would move or remain steady. Another tested the space near the bed's edge, stretching its claws but stopping short, as if understanding that aggression was not the path to control here. The humans subtly shifted their posture, leaning slightly back or forward, adjusting the tilt of a hand, and each tiny action elicited a response from the cubs. It became a silent dialogue, a careful dance of awareness between human and predator. There was no rush, no force, only patient, deliberate observation and minor adjustments to communicate calm authority. The cubs responded quickly, their sharp minds reading every motion, learning that aggression met with patience and presence rather than confrontation. By the end of this silent interaction, the human had not only maintained safety, but had begun to build a deep understanding of each cub's personality, instincts, and intelligence, proving that respect and control could coexist through observation and thoughtful action. Hours passed in a tense, quiet dance between human and cubs. The room was dimly lit, shadows flickering across the walls as the cubs moved cautiously, their eyes tracking every subtle motion. The human stayed calm, sitting or standing with deliberate steadiness, never making sudden gestures or showing fear. Each growl, shuffle, and tentative step from the cubs was met with measured composure. Time seemed to stretch, as patience became the silent weapon of authority. The cubs tested limits, darting closer to the edge of the bed or sniffing near the human's hands, but each time they hesitated, sensing that aggression would meet nothing but calm observation. Slowly, the energy in the room shifted. The sharp tension in their muscles softened, tails no longer lashed with uncontrolled force, and ears began to lower in recognition rather than threat. It was a subtle acknowledgement that the human's authority was not earned through dominance or noise, but through unwavering patience and controlled presence. The longer the human maintained this calm, the more the cubs seemed to accept it, their fierce instincts giving way to cautious respect. By the end of the night, what began as a test of endurance had turned into an unspoken understanding. Authority could be established through patience, observation, and self-control, teaching the cubs that composure was a force far stronger than immediate aggression. By the middle of the night, the atmosphere in the containment area had shifted completely. The cubs, once restless and aggressive, now moved with a calm that was almost surreal. One by one, they approached the human, sniffing cautiously and then settling close, their bodies curling near the bed in quiet submission. Their growls had vanished, replaced by soft, low murmurs as if acknowledging the human's quiet authority. The transformation was subtle but undeniable. What had begun as tension and potential danger had evolved into a tentative trust that radiated from the cubs. From the observation platforms above, the guards could hardly believe what they were seeing. They had expected a night filled with chaos and potential injury, but instead they witnessed a silent demonstration of patience, presence, and understanding. Each cub's choice to settle near the human spoke volumes, showing that respect and acceptance could be earned without fear, force, or intimidation. The human remained calm, hands resting gently, posture steady, silently communicating that aggression would meet patience and trust would be met with care. By the end of the night, a bond had formed, one that redefined the human's role, not as a mere caretaker, but as a quiet leader capable of bridging instinct with empathy, showing that strength often lies in composure and subtle guidance. As the first pale light of the station's artificial day slowly illuminated the containment room, a calm stillness filled the air. The cubs, once restless and unpredictable, now lay quietly, their movements relaxed, eyes half closed in what could only be called trust. The human sat or stood with the same steady presence as through the long night, a quiet authority that had never relied on force or loud commands. Each cub's subtle shift, the gentle curling of their bodies near the human, was a silent acknowledgement. Respect had been earned, not demanded. Guards and fellow staff watching from observation decks above whispered among themselves, astonished at what had unfolded. They had come expecting chaos, perhaps even injury, but instead, they witnessed a delicate balance of patience, calm, and understanding that had transformed instinctive aggression into peaceful acknowledgement. The human's quiet movements, measured gestures, and unwavering focus had communicated something universal. Leadership and control did not require dominance, only clarity, patience, and presence. By the time the station's lights fully brightened the room, a new understanding existed between human and cubs, one built on respect rather than fear. That night would be remembered as a demonstration of how calm confidence and empathy could tame even the most unpredictable and dangerous creatures. Teaching all who watched that true authority comes from composure, not intimidation. The events of that night quickly became more than just an unusual incident. They transformed into legend across the entire space station. Staff, guards, and students retold the story in hushed tones, each adding their own awe at what had occurred. A single human, faced with the fierce and unpredictable predator cubs, had remained calm, collected, and unafraid. No one had expected such a display of intelligence and bravery, especially from someone who had been considered merely a caretaker. As the tale spread, it became clear that the human had not relied on weapons, force, or intimidation to gain control. Instead, patience, quiet observation, and steady presence had turned potential disaster into an extraordinary demonstration of respect and authority. Every listener realized something profound. Humanity's true strength did not lie in aggression, power, or status, but in resilience, understanding, and the ability to act wisely under pressure. The cubs, creatures known for their cunning and instinctive ferocity, had accepted this authority, proving that trust and calm leadership could surpass fear and brute force. For weeks afterward, whispers of that legendary night inspired both humans and aliens alike, reminding everyone that courage coupled with intelligence could create change and earn respect where violence could never reach. That night became a symbol, a story that would endure as a testament to what humanity could achieve when calmness and wisdom guided action.